Top Med Talk.
Well, hello and welcome to Top Med Talk here at Anesthesiology 2024 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. I'm Desiree Chappell. I'm your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Professor Mike Grocott. Hello, Mike.
Good afternoon, Desiree.
We have had an amazing time here at the Anesthesiology meeting. The exhibit hall has been a buzz. I love the energy here. That's felt really good.
Great interview this morning with one of my personal heroes, Henrik Kellett. So the founder, godfather, father, we'll work it out, but one of the initiators of enhanced recovery, which obviously has spread around the world. I always think if there was a Nobel Prize for clinical medicine, as opposed to, all the sciencey stuff, he'd be deserving awardee.
Absolutely. Well, we wanted to say thank you to the ASA for supporting us with this beautiful booth right in the middle in the center of all the action here in the exhibit hall. We couldn't be here without you, so thank you so much. And thank you to our sponsors, Edwards Life Sciences, GE Healthcare, and Medtronic, for keeping Top Med Talk free and open to the entire world. So thank you guys so much for that. So as Mike and I were saying, we've had outstanding guests throughout the entire weekend, and this conversation is no different. So it's with pleasure I get to introduce our next guests, Ben Houseman and Mike Hofkamp. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. All right, Ben, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your practice, where you are right now?
Absolutely. So I'm the program director at a small residency program in Southeast Florida called Memorial Healthcare. We started our program in 2019, brand new program, and our health system is about 100,000 anesthetics a year. So we have a large kind of volume of cases, really great infrastructure, and we were able to start our academic anesthesiology program there. I came from California, where I was at Kaiser and UCSF prior to this role, and I've been doing this since we started in 2019, and we've been using Toolbox from the time we started the residency program.
Fantastic. And Mike, what about you? Tell us more about yourself.
So I'm the director of undergraduate medical education for my anesthesia department at Baylor, Scott & White in Temple, Texas. I started creating content for the Anesthesia Toolbox in 2017. Then 2018, I was named an associate editor for it. Over time, it evolved. It was purchased by the ASA a couple years ago. And I'm now on the editorial board for the Anesthesia Toolbox. In the editor role, I review creators who submit their content and approve it. And it goes on the platform and it's available for people to use.
Fantastic.
So, Mike, when did the whole project start then? You talked about 2016, 17, but who and when started it all off?
So I have to give the due credit to a gentleman named Glenn Woodworth from Oregon Health Sciences University. He started the Toolbox in the early 2010s to teach people how to do regional anesthesia, particularly ultrasound-guided regional anesthesia, because this was an emerging technology. A lot of attending physicians hadn't trained on it as a resident, but we needed to get them up to speed and learn this new emerging therapy. And so he created content for that and also for the residents, because this was an emerging field for the residents. And it kind of evolved saying, well, we can do this with regional anesthesia. Let's do this with other disciplines such as obstetric, pediatric. And now we have a full complement of material. We're constantly updating it. We're constantly reinventing it. And for a residency like Ben's, he may not have the same army of faculty with expertise that are able and willing to teach that a larger department has. And so this platform can kind of fill in the gaps and allow Ben to educate his residents through this online resource.
Give me a flavor of the types of content. Is this video? It's text? It's what does it look like?
So that's a great question. So there's lots of different formats. Some of it is podcasts like this. Mm-hmm. Some of it is learning modules where the learner interacts. Attending physicians know we all hate the health stream mandatory learning modules that our employers have us do, but it's the same technology, but it's for educational content. Materials for the instructors too. We have PBLDs, problem-based learning discussions, that the attending physicians can take into the operating room and use to teach the residents. And we also have a quiz bank. And so the quiz bank is for the residents to test their knowledge on the subject matter. And that's probably one of the more popular components of our platform.
Yeah. So Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about, since you've been interacting with it, and the applicability of this in residency programs?
Yeah, so I think, I chose to subscribe to the Toolbox for our health system program because both my residents and my faculty were in need of a resource that they could use and share. And I think that the faculty, I would say, benefit the most in the sense that they don't have to create content for basic education in curriculum development for any of the anesthesia levels. So the Toolbox is great in that it has like a medical student curriculum for rotating medical students. It has curricula for all of the required rotations in the first, second, and third year of anesthesia residency. It also even has fellowship level curricula for regional and pediatric anesthesia right now. Since ASA's taken it over, they've enhanced it even further with the quiz bank and the question of the day and a couple of other resources. So for me, I can just say, okay, faculty member, Dr. Diaz, who's one of my favorite faculty, who's currently our vice chief, I know you want to talk about valvular heart disease. Why don't you take a look at the Toolbox, see what resources are available, and then adapt those to your session and utilize those with residents. Furthermore, you can grab some quiz questions and maybe grab a problem-based learning discussion, and that will help you run your educational session on this topic with our trainees at any level you want.
Yeah.
And it really has made it easier for me as a program leader to kind of take the burden off of them, because even though everyone has been a resident, a lot of people kind of lose their resident, teacher mojo after being in practice for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And everybody remembers how to ride a bike. They just need to get a little bit of help to get back on it and go at a really high speed.
Yeah, and I feel like we all have our passions and our interests, and we want to impart that knowledge upon the next generation of physicians and clinicians. I would imagine this is a really nice supplement for them to be able to utilize it. And also, it really does kind of standardize what we're teaching and the resources that we're providing for our residents and students. So can you tell us a little bit about that and talk about that angle of it?
Like the standardization perspective? Yeah, I think, one of the nice things about anesthesia training is that the core material hasn't changed a lot. I mean, enhanced recovery has been like a, kind of monumental change in our practice. But the basic science of anesthesia, with a couple of notable exceptions, has remained largely stable over the last decade.
Yeah.
So again, I think we all have to teach the same material to our residents all across the country.
Yeah.
And making sure that we deliver that material in a standard way and cover it thoughtfully and effectively has always been a source of variability in our training programs. And I personally like having that standardized resource so that I don't have to worry about maybe not being up to date on a topic.
I'm just getting over Ben telling me the basic science hasn't changed. I spend most of my time researching. I'm heartbroken.
Well, I'm a PhD in chemistry. So no, but
I hear you. I know.
But you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah,
like the inhaled anesthetics have not evolved a whole lot in the last 12 years.
For sure. I'm interested, Mike. So I'm a journal editor. It's a great resource, but with it comes a significant responsibility. The risks of low quality or misinformation. How do you manage this sort of quality control editorial side of things?
Oh, I can tell you, it's a rigorous peer review process. I can tell you that I have submitted journal articles that are now PubMed indexed that required less scrutiny than some of the educational content that I've submitted. It's a daunting process. We go through it with a fine-tooth comb. It has to be the highest quality because particularly now it's being backed by the ASA. We can't put out a low-quality product. So factually, it has to be correct, obviously. And then educational-wise, it has to be the right format. Sometimes we get people who submit podcasts that really should be learning modules and vice versa. And so we will provide that feedback to the creator of the content, and we'll work with them to get them across the finish line. But it's a tough process.
And how do you handle sort of controversies or areas where there's debate, where there's perhaps different perspectives you want to bring into play?
Yeah, so we'll do pro-con debates sometimes in a podcast. Yeah. We are very careful to make sure that we present an accurate perspective of the current evidence. And on our editorial board, we make sure that we have content experts. And so there's a guy who's a pediatric anesthesia expert. My interest is obstetric anesthesia. Someone else does critical care. And when those members of the editorial board rotate off, we make sure that we replace them with someone with similar competence and expertise.
Yeah, I'd imagine the value then really increases with this content because you, as an educator yourself, you are very confident in what is being put out there from this standpoint. So I would imagine that's fantastic. Let's talk about how it works for the learner and talking about the exams that they have to go through and all that. How does that work?
Well, so the anesthesia residents have to take the American Board of Anesthesiology exam. There's a basic exam they take at the end of their second year of residency, and then there's the advanced exam that they take at the end of their residency. And while we're not interested in necessarily teaching to the test, this isn't a test prep resource per se. Mm-hmm. We want to give them the foundational scientific knowledge so that they can pass these exams. And someone should be able to use the Anesthesia Toolbox and pass their American Board of Anesthesiology exams. When I do curriculum maps for the obstetric anesthesia content, the first thing I do is I go to the ABA board exam outline, and I make sure that every single topic in the OB anesthesia curriculum is represented in our educational platform.
Yeah, that's really important. So one of the things as a learner is going through this process, Ben, from your experience with the dashboards and the metrics and things that are available, how does that contribute to the overall success of the toolkit and for our residents?
For me, I don't necessarily utilize the dashboards to a lot of extent. I'm more interested in kind of making sure that we cover content areas over the course of each resident year. So again, our curriculum is similar to many anesthesiology programs in that we do a number of rotations in the PGY2 year, subspecialty work in PGY3, and then advanced work in PGY4 or CA3. So I utilize the toolbox for each of those clinical rotations and then make sure that we're covering the appropriate content. And then I give the residents the opportunity to, use the questions and the quiz banks. But I don't necessarily, do much more than that as in my role as program leader.
How does the nuts and bolts of it work in terms of, I think you said you purchased it as the program director, and then presumably the guys you're training have access to it, but how does that work? Is there a limit on the license? Or?
So the Memorial Healthcare System, as part of my program budget, I requested this as one of our core elements of our program budget for our educational program. So we have a subscription that we pay a certain amount per year, and that subscription, I suspect, varies depending on the size of the program. We have a relatively small program, so it's a very reasonable cost, and that will include the residents and then all of the faculty that are engaged in resident education at our facility, which is a reasonably large number of people. We have 12 residents total, so we're pretty much the smallest program that you'll see in anesthesia. Mm-hmm. So it's been really nice, though, because, again, the residents and then the faculty who are teaching them all have access through the institutional work.
And when they finish their residency, you kind of take the login back and hang it onto the key.
Exactly. So every year I get a form from the toolbox saying, can you please update your roster? So we update our roster on a yearly basis. We didn't have much of a change until this past year because I had never graduated anybody, but now that I have, I was able to take 2 names off and put 3 names on.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Michael, we were talking before, and you said there's potentially individual subscriptions down the line?
That's something that we're discussing now. We know that there are some attending physicians out there who will have a change in practice. Yeah. And in fact, one of our editorial board members, Rick Dutton, he decided that he was going to move his practice to a different state, and he had to do obstetric anesthesia for the first time in 20 years. And so he found the content on the toolbox to be very helpful to kind of get him back up to speed. And so I think that there's opportunities for people to purchase an individual license. We haven't worked out the fine details, but we would love for people to be able to purchase individual license so they can access this product and benefit from it.
Right. What a great resource. Ben, when you're talking about, you have a smaller residency program, there are much larger ones, of course. I would imagine that there's scalability to the platform and all the tools and resources that are available.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's great. Well, gentlemen, I think this is a fascinating conversation. I'm really excited to talk about it here on Top Med Talk. If people want more information about this, about the Anesthesia Toolbox, where would be the best place for them to go?
The American Society of Anesthesiologists website.
Uh-huh.
And there's some content that's restricted to members only, but we do have a great website that discusses all of our educational options.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll link all of that in our show notes, so be sure to check that out. Any final thoughts about where the toolbox is going and what kind of next steps are?
The toolbox continues to evolve. We'll look at best educational practices, and we will continue to modify our content to make it relevant to the learner. And we hope that it continues to be valued as a resource, and we continue to do it.
Ben, from your perspective, what are you most excited about?
I'm very excited about kind of the ability of ASA to kind of influence this platform as well. So I'm a member of what's called a Program Director Advisory Group for ASA, and they came to us to seek input on how to improve the toolbox as well. So again, I think that having a larger kind of enterprise that's helping with the development of this platform will only make it more useful to a broader audience. And again, I do agree that having the ability to do subscriptions outside of an institutional subscription would be really nice. You know, I work with Envision Physician Services, and a lot of my colleagues that don't work in our residency program have asked about this as well. So I do think that this idea is something that will take hold very quickly if it's available.
And I guess it's hugely rich. The ASA ownership of the whole platform, it really gives a feeling of sustainability about the whole endeavor.
Yeah,
and absolutely. The collaborative approach and the rich nature of the content there is fantastic. Dr. Houseman, Dr. Hofkamp, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that we can catch up again and hear more about where the toolbox is going in the future. I appreciate you taking the time out of what I know is a very busy meeting.
Thank you for having us.
it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to Top Med Talk. You know, you can always find us on your favorite social media platform, X, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. We are there. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Every little bit helps. Again, thank you to our sponsors and to the ASA. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Top Med Talk. Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on YouTube and, of course, on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook and X. Also, it's important to remember that Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that, and the way to do that is ebpom.org. Check out our website and find out about some of the incredible conferences we're going to be arranging across the year. ebpom.org.